I came home expecting dinner and quiet. Instead, I found my daughter hiding in my car, shaking, begging me not to go inside. And when my wife opened the front door, smiling like nothing was wrong, I realized my whole life was already packed and waiting behind her. Folks, Uncle Mickle here. And before you think this is just another marriage gone wrong story, let me tell you, this one didn't start with an argument or a text message. It started with fear. The kind of fear you only see in a child who knows something you don't. It was a Thursday evening, late summer. The kind of day that wears you out without doing anything dramatic. Work ran long. Traffic crawled. All I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, maybe complain a little about my back, and hear my kid laugh at something dumb on TV. That was the plan. I pulled into our driveway just as the sun was dropping low, painting everything orange and soft. Our house looked the same as it always had. Trimmed hedges, porch lights still off, curtains drawn halfway like my wife always left them. Normal. Familiar. Safe. I killed the engine and reached for my phone. That's when I heard a sound from the back seat. A small, sharp inhale. Like someone trying not to cry. I froze. Now, parents know this feeling. That split second where your brain runs through every bad possibility before your body even moves. I turned slowly, heart already beating too fast, and there she was, my daughter, curled up on the floor behind the driver's seat, knees tucked to her chest, hair messy, eyes red and wide like she'd been crying for a while. "Sweetheart," I said, "what are you doing back there?" She didn't answer right away, just crawled forward, grabbed my arm with both hands, and held on like if she let go, something terrible would happen. Her hands were cold. "Dad," she whispered, and I mean whispered, like the car itself might be listening. "Don't go inside." I laughed. I hate admitting that, but I did. A short, confused laugh, like this was some kind of game or prank or overactive imagination. "What do you mean, don't go inside?" I said, "Did you scare yourself watching one of those shows again?" She shook her head, so hard her ponytail came loose. "She told me not to tell you," my daughter said, "but you can't go in. Please." Now, if you've ever been a parent, you know when a kid's scared for real. This wasn't a nightmare. This wasn't drama. This was survival-level fear. And still, I didn't understand it. I opened my door, stepped out of the car, and looked toward the house. Everything was quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but nothing looked wrong. No lights flicking on and off. No strange cars. No sounds. I told myself she must have misunderstood something. Kids do that. They hear half a conversation and build a whole monster out of it. I helped her out of the car, wrapped an arm around her, and said the dumbest thing a man can say when he doesn't want to face the truth. "It's fine," I told her. "Dad's here." As we walked up the driveway, I noticed the front door crack open. My wife stood there. She smiled. Now, I've seen that woman smile for over a decade. I know the real ones. I know the tired ones. I know the polite ones she gives neighbors she doesn't like. This one was stretched too wide, held too long. And then I saw it, just over her shoulder, half hidden behind the wall in the entryway. A suitcase, standing upright, zipped, ready. In that moment, my daughter squeezed my hand tighter, and I understood something was already ending. I just didn't know yet whether I was walking into a goodbye or into a lie that was about to change all our lives. And that's where it began. Before that night, before the suitcase and the smile that didn't belong on my wife's face, my life was ordinary. And I mean that in the best way. I was a routine man. Wake up early, same coffee mug every morning, same creak in my knees when I stood too fast. Work, home, dinner, a little TV, lights out. Nothing flashy. Nothing exciting enough to brag about. But it was solid. Or at least I believed it was. Our house wasn't big, but it was ours. We'd painted the living room twice, because my wife could never decide on a color. The hallway still had a dent in the wall from when my daughter tried to roller skate indoors at 6 years old. Every mark, every scratch had a story. That mattered to me. My wife and I had been together a long time. Long enough that silence didn't feel awkward. Long enough that we could sit in the same room doing different things and still feel connected. She handled the details, birthdays, schedules, school stuff. I handled the structure, bills, repairs, being the steady one when things went sideways. At least, that's how I thought it worked. I wasn't blind to the fact that marriage changes. Anyone who tells you it stays the same is lying or selling something. Romance becomes routine. Passion turns into partnership. You stop asking how each other's day was because you already know the answer. But I trusted her. Completely. She was a good mother. Patient. Attentive. Protective in a way that made me feel safe leaving our daughter with her while I worked late. And our daughter adored her. Followed her around the house. Told her everything. Secrets, worries, silly thoughts kids don't share with adults they don't trust. That's important. Remember that. Looking back, the warning signs weren't loud. They never are. They were small. Quiet. Easy to explain away if you didn't want to look too closely. She started staying up later than me. Said she liked the quiet after everyone was asleep. Fair enough. I snored. The couch probably felt peaceful. Her phone never left her side. Bathroom, kitchen, even quick trips to the mailbox. She'd flip it face down when I walked into the room. When I asked about it, she laughed and said she was just tired of notifications. Work stress, she said. Everyone was stressed these days. There were days she seemed distant, not angry, just elsewhere, like she was thinking about something she hadn't told me yet. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd smile, that normal smile, and say, "Just tired." I believed her, because believing her was easier than questioning the foundation of my life. Dinner conversations got shorter. Less eye contact. More nodding, less sharing. But we never fought. Never raised our voices. Never slammed doors. And I took that as proof we were strong. That was my mistake. I thought the absence of conflict meant peace. I didn't realize it could also mean secrecy. The night before everything broke, she packed my daughter's school lunch while humming. Like everything was normal. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I'd be late the next day. When I said probably, she nodded and said, "Okay." Just okay. No follow-up. No sigh. No complaint. At the time, I thought it was maturity. Now I know it was distance. And here's the part that still gets me. My daughter had started clinging to me more. Little things. Sitting closer. Asking if I'd be home for dinner. Wanting hugs longer than usual. Kids notice shifts before adults do. I wish I'd paid attention. Because somewhere between those quiet dinners and polite smiles, something in my house had already changed. Something I wasn't invited into. And it was waiting for me, just on the other side of the front door. Now, let me ask you something before I go further. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something was off, but you ignored it because you didn't want to believe it? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this. After my daughter begged me not to go inside, I did what most men like me do when faced with something we don't understand. I tried to stay calm. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation, a misunderstanding. Maybe my wife was planning some kind of surprise, and my daughter had overheard part of it and panicked. Kids fill in the blanks with fear when adults leave them guessing. That's what I told myself as I stood on the front step, key still in my hand. My daughter pressed against my leg like she was trying to anchor me to the ground. My wife opened the door wider. "Hey," she said, too bright, too quick. "You're home early." I wasn't early. I was exactly on time. She knew that. Something in my chest tightened. I asked my daughter to go to her room. She looked up at me like I'd betrayed her already, like she was handing me a warning, and I was choosing not to listen. She hesitated, then did as I asked. Walked past her mother without a word. Didn't look back. That's when I noticed my wife stepped slightly to the side, blocking my view of the hallway. A small thing. A natural movement. But it registered. I stepped inside anyway. The house smelled different. Not bad. Just unfamiliar. Like someone had opened windows that were usually closed. The air felt disturbed. Lived in, but not settled. I nodded toward the suitcase. "What's that?" I asked. She followed my gaze, then shrugged. "Casual. Too casual." "Oh, that. Just sorting some things." Sorting. My wife had never sorted anything without telling me exactly why. I waited. Said nothing. Let the silence stretch. I'd learned over the years that people reveal more when you don't rush them. She filled it quickly. Work stuff, she added. I might need to travel soon. That was the first lie. I didn't know it then, but my body did. My shoulders stiffened. My breathing changed. There's a moment when your instincts speak before your mind catches up. And that was it. Travel. She hadn't mentioned anything about travel. No stress. No deadlines. No meetings out of town. I asked her where she was going. She said she didn't know yet. That was the second lie. Dinner that night was the quietest it had ever been. My daughter barely touched her food. My wife talked too much. About nothing. About a co-worker's dog. About a show she'd watched. About traffic. I watched her hands instead of her face. They shook slightly when she lifted her glass. After dinner, my daughter went to her room without being told. Didn't say goodnight to her mother. That wasn't normal. Later, when my wife went to shower, I did something I'd never done in our entire marriage. I checked her phone. Not because I wanted to. Because something in me said I had to. It was locked. New password. That alone told me more than any message ever could. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at that phone like it was ticking. Every memory I had of us replayed in my head. But now they didn't feel solid anymore. They felt edited. Like scenes cut differently once you knew the ending. When she came out of the bathroom, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I asked one simple question. Is there anything you want to tell me? She froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. No, she said. Why? I nodded. Because if she was lying, I wanted to see how far she'd take it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to her breathe, thinking about my daughter's hands gripping my arm, her whisper in the car, the fear in her eyes. Kids don't invent fear like that. They absorb it. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about me and my wife anymore. Whatever was happening in my house had already reached my child. And that meant I couldn't look away. Folks, pause for a second. What would you have done in my position? Would you have confronted her right then? Or would you have waited and watched? Drop your answer below. I'm curious what you would have chosen. The next morning felt heavier than it should have. Nothing had happened yet, and somehow everything already had. My wife moved through the kitchen like an actress hitting her marks. Coffee poured. Toast popped. Lunch packed. She spoke in complete sentences, calm and practiced, like she'd rehearsed them in her head before I woke up. My daughter didn't say a word. She ate quietly, eyes down, shoulders tense. When my wife reached out to brush a crumb off her cheek, my daughter flinched. Just a little. But enough. That's when I knew I wasn't imagining things anymore. After they left, my wife to work, my daughter to school, I stayed home. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well. That wasn't a lie. I felt like something inside me had already cracked, and I was just waiting for the sound. I started small. Not dramatic. Not obsessive. Just attentive. I checked a credit card statement. Nothing obvious, but there were cash withdrawals I didn't recognize. Smaller amounts. Spread out. Easy to miss if you weren't looking. I checked the car. The trunk was cleaner than usual. Too clean. Like someone had made room. I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at that suitcase. Then I opened it. Inside were clothes that weren't meant for a business trip. Casual. Personal. Folded carefully. Toiletries tucked into side pockets. And at the bottom a folder. Documents. Lease papers. Not in my name. Her name was there. Clear as day. My hands went numb. I sat down on the floor and just stared at the pages. Address. Move-in date. 2 weeks earlier. 2 weeks. She hadn't just decided to leave. She had already been preparing. While we ate dinner together. While she kissed me goodnight. While my daughter watched. That realization hit harder than anything else. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a plan. I didn't cry. Not then. I felt hollow. Like the part of me that reacted emotionally had stepped aside, so something colder could take over. I put everything back exactly where it was. That evening I waited. When my wife came home, she didn't notice anything different about me. Or maybe she did, and chose not to acknowledge it. She smiled, asked about my day, complained about traffic. I asked her to sit down. She hesitated. then sat. I slid the folder across the table. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. Her face changed. Not panic. Not anger. Just resignation. Like someone who'd been caught after already saying goodbye. "It's not what you think," she said. "That sentence should be illegal." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't interrupt. I just waited. She admitted she'd been unhappy. That she felt stuck. That she needed space. That she hadn't planned to tell me yet, because she didn't want to hurt me. I asked her one question. "What did you tell our daughter?" She looked down. She found out. My wife said. She overheard a conversation. I told her not to worry. Not to worry. I felt something break then. Not loud. Just final. I stood up and walked out of the room. I went to my daughter's bedroom and sat on the edge of her bed. She looked at me like she'd been waiting all day. "Dad," she asked quietly, "are you leaving?" I hugged her, and that's when I cried, because no matter what my wife said, no matter how she justified it, the truth was simple. She had made my child afraid. She had made plans behind my back. She had already chosen a life without me, and expected me to just accept it. I need you to understand something here. This wasn't just betrayal. This was my whole life crumbling. Have you ever been blindsided like this? Someone you trusted completely, just destroying everything? Share your story below if you've been there. Let's heal together. That night, I slept alone. And for the first time in my adult life, I understood something clearly. The marriage I thought I was protecting had already ended. The only question left was what I was going to do next. There's a strange calm that comes after everything you believed in falls apart. Not peace. Not acceptance. Just clarity. That's what I felt the morning after the truth came out. I woke up alone in my own bed, staring at the ceiling. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, my thoughts weren't racing. They lined up, one after another. Clean. Sharp. My wife was already up. I could hear movement in the kitchen. Dishes. Cabinets. Normal sounds. Like nothing had happened. I sat there for a long time before I got up. Not because I was afraid to face her, but because I was deciding who I was going to be when I did. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't beg. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the table across from her like we were negotiating a business deal. "I'm not going to fight you," I said, "but I'm not going to pretend this is okay." She looked relieved. That told me everything. I told her we needed to talk about our daughter first. Not assets. Not schedules. Not feelings. The child. She agreed quickly. Too quickly. I made it clear, whatever she was planning, it would not be done in secret. No sudden disappearances. No confusing stories. No packing bags while little girl watched and wondered if her world was about to vanish. That was my line in the sand. The rest of the day, I stayed busy. Purposefully. I called a lawyer. I didn't explain the whole story, just enough. I opened a new bank account. I gathered documents. Quiet steps. Controlled steps. Every action I took felt like reclaiming an inch of myself. Between calls, I thought about my daughter. About how she had hidden in my car like it was the safest place she could find. About how she had tried to protect me when I should have been protecting her. That thought hardened something in me. I wasn't interested in revenge. Not shouting matches. Not dramatic scenes. I didn't want to hurt my wife the way she'd hurt me. But I also wasn't going to disappear quietly from my own life. That evening, I sat my wife down again. "I know about the lease," I said. She went pale. I told her I knew what had started, how long she'd been planning, that I knew this wasn't some last-minute realization, it was a strategy. She tried to explain again. Words like confused, lost, finding myself. I stopped her. "Here's how this is going to work," I said. "Calm, flat, final. You can leave. But you don't take our daughter with you like this is some clean break. You don't rewrite the story to make yourself feel better. And you don't pretend this didn't happen." I told her custody would be discussed through lawyers. That we'd tell our daughter together, honestly, carefully, without blame. And then I said the hardest thing I'd said yet. "You don't get to control how this ends." That was the moment the balance shifted. She realized then that I wasn't collapsing. I wasn't begging her to stay. I wasn't trying to win her back. I was standing up. That night, after my daughter went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The house felt different, emptier, but also clearer, like the fog had lifted and left behind a cold, sharp outline of reality. I thought about revenge, about exposing her, about forcing her to feel the same humiliation and fear I'd felt. And then I thought about my daughter, and I chose something else. Control, dignity, truth. Here's where I made my choice. Now I want to know, do you believe in revenge, or do you believe in walking away? What's the right move when someone destroys your trust? Comment below. I want to hear both sides. I didn't know yet how it would all play out, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to be the man this story broke. The moment came faster than I expected. 2 days after the lease papers surfaced, my wife told me she was taking the afternoon off work. Said she needed time to clear her head. She didn't ask if that was okay. She informed me. That told me everything. I didn't argue. I nodded. Calm. Neutral. Like I hadn't already connected the dots. She waited until our daughter was at school. Until the house was quiet. Until she thought the stage was clear. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she rolled the suitcase out of the hallway. No hesitation now. No pretending. She stood there, hand on the handle, eyes darting around like she was bracing for impact. I think it's best if I go stay somewhere else for a bit, she said. For a bit, I repeated. She nodded. Just until things cool down. That's when I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't block the door. I didn't insult her. I simply said, before you go, there's something you need to know. She tensed. I told her I'd already spoken to a lawyer. That custody wouldn't be informal or improvised. That any attempt to frame this as a mutual decision would be corrected, legally and factually. Her eyes widened. I told her I'd documented everything. Dates, conversations, the lease, the effect this had already had on our daughter. Not to punish her, but to protect my child. You don't get to vanish and come back when it's convenient, I said. And you don't get to pretend this didn't start long before I knew. She tried to interrupt. I didn't let her. You planned this, I continued. You involved our daughter in your silence. And now you want to leave without consequence. Her face flushed. Anger now. Not fear. That's not fair, she snapped. I nodded once. Neither was what you did. Silence filled the room. Thick. Heavy. She looked at the suitcase. Then at me. What do you want? She asked. I took a breath. I want honesty, I said. From now on. With me. With our daughter. With everyone. She realized then what this was. Not revenge. Exposure. She could leave, but not as a victim. Not as someone escaping an unhappy marriage. The truth would follow her, calmly and consistently. She dropped the handle of the suitcase. And for the first time since this began, she cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears, sliding down her face. I didn't comfort her. I didn't need to. Later that afternoon, we sat our daughter down together. That was the hardest part. We told her the truth, in words a child could understand. That her parents were changing, but she wasn't being abandoned. That she hadn't done anything wrong. That she was safe. My daughter looked at her mother and asked one question. Why didn't you tell Dad? My wife couldn't answer. And in that moment, everything changed. And this is the moment everything changed. Tell me, are you rooting for me right now? Or do you think I went too far? Be honest in the comments. Uncle Mickle can take it. That night, my wife left the house. No shouting. No police. No slammed doors. Just a suitcase rolling down the driveway and a chapter closing without applause. I stood at the window with my daughter's arm wrapped around my waist. We watched the taillights disappear. I felt hollow, but I also felt steady. The truth was out. The power had shifted. The fog was gone. What came next wouldn't be easy, but it would be real. And for the first time since my daughter hid in my car and begged me not to go inside, I knew I was finally standing on solid ground. The days after she left blurred together in a quiet I wasn't used to. Not the peaceful kind. The cautious kind. Like the house itself was learning how to breathe again without holding its lungs tight. My wife moved into that apartment across town. We didn't talk much at first, only through text, only about our daughter. Pickups, drop-offs, school schedules, short sentences, no emotion attached. That wasn't cruelty. That was survival. My daughter stayed with me most nights. She slept in her own bed again after a few restless evenings, though sometimes I'd hear her padding down the hallway just to make sure I was still there. I never complained. I never sent her back. We learned a new rhythm. Mornings became quieter, less tension. Breakfasts were slower. I walked her to school more often, even when I didn't need to. We talked about small things, homework, friends, what she wanted for dinner. We didn't talk much about her mother. Not because we were avoiding it, but because I didn't want her world to become defined by what was broken. I wanted her to remember what was still solid. Me. Some nights, after she fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room and let myself feel everything I'd held back. The anger, the grief, the disbelief. I didn't drown in it. I just acknowledged it. That mattered, because healing doesn't happen by pretending you're fine. It happens by telling the truth, quietly, consistently. The divorce process started. Slow, unromantic, paperwork and calendars and uncomfortable conversations. My wife tried at times to soften the story, to frame it as mutual drifting. I didn't argue. I corrected. Calmly, firmly, always with facts. And something strange happened over time. She stopped pushing. Not because I won, but because she realized I wasn't playing. I wasn't trying to punish her. I wasn't trying to rewrite the past. I was just refusing to carry shame that wasn't mine. That changed how she spoke to me, how she spoke to our daughter. It changed the power dynamic without a single raised voice. Weeks turned into months. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt lived in again. A little emptier, sure, but honest. And honesty has a weight to it, grounding, stabilizing. I learned things about myself during that time. That I could sit alone without collapsing. That I didn't need someone else's approval to be whole. That being steady was more important than being loved by someone who'd already chosen to leave. My daughter smiled more, laughed easier. The fear left her eyes. That alone told me I'd done the right thing. Looking back now, I wonder if I'd do it all the same way again. What about you? If you could go back and handle your worst betrayal differently, would you? Or was the pain necessary to become who you are now? Let me know below. I didn't come out of this untouched. I came out reshaped, stripped down to what mattered, and rebuilt slowly, deliberately, on truth instead of comfort. There was still one thing left to say. One lesson earned the hard way. And that's where the story ends. Time is a strange thing after betrayal. It doesn't erase what happened. It just puts space between you and the pain, so you can finally see it clearly. A year passed. Then another. Life didn't magically improve, but it stabilized. The sharp edges dulled. The constant tension faded. What remained was something quieter and stronger than what I had before. Self-respect. My relationship with my daughter deepened in ways I never expected. We built new traditions, weekend breakfasts, evening walks, honest conversations that didn't feel forced. She learned slowly that adults can fail without the world ending. And I learned that being present matters more than being perfect. My wife and I found a functional balance. Not friendship, not bitterness either. Just reality, boundaries, responsibility, accountability. And that was enough. I used to think forgiveness meant letting someone off the hook. Now I understand it means letting go of the weight they dropped on you. I didn't forgive her to make her feel better. I forgave her so I could move forward without dragging anger behind me like a chain. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean silence. It means knowing your worth and refusing to bargain it away just to keep the peace. If you're listening to this and you're in that moment right now, the moment where something feels off, where the truth is pressing against your chest and you're scared of what happens if you look straight at it, hear me clearly. Ignoring reality doesn't protect you. It just delays the cost. When my daughter hid in my car and begged me not to go inside, she wasn't just warning me about a suitcase or a lie. She was showing me the truth I'd been avoiding. And once I finally faced it, I didn't lose everything. I lost an illusion, and I gained something far more valuable. myself. So here's my final question for you, and I really want to hear your thoughts. Is it better to forgive and move on, or to make sure they understand exactly what they lost? There's no wrong answer. Drop it in the comments. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Uncle Mickle's voice travels. Sometimes the hardest truths don't destroy you, they set you free.